Welcome. Yes, tonight I'm going to take you far away, deep into an ancient world. Right now we're in a place where time seems to have stopped. All you can hear are whispers that carry the secrets of the past, talking about gods and legendary creatures. So, our story today is about Chinese mythology. The legends of this ancient land will unfold a world as vast as the sky, where dragons dance and emperors chase immortality. Take a deep breath. Because this journey isn't just a simple storytelling session. We're heading to a magical time when dragons soared through the sky, ancient gods descended to earth, and emperors desperately sought immortality. Think of mythology not as a page in a book, but as a life lived in its entirety. Back then, everything had a meaning. Every creature, every legend touched the lives of people. Today I'll share these incredible stories with you, but not just in any way. I'll tell them as if I've witnessed them myself, with the words of a wise person who lived in those times. Where do we start? Of course, at the very beginning. You'll hear about the creation of the universe and the power that separated the sky from the earth. Listen to how a giant named Pangu slept inside a massive egg for 18,000 years and then woke up to shape the world. But this is just the beginning. There's so much more to see. So come on, let this ancient tale begin. Yes, we're diving into the foundations of Chinese mythology now. As a wise storyteller, I wish I could convey the scent of those days, that magical atmosphere to you. We're in ancient times, so ancient that people hadn't really come into existence yet. The world was just chaos. But from that chaos, a level of order beyond our comprehension was born. And this order took shape with the shamans of nature and the ancient gods. A deep respect for nature grew under the guidance of shamans who believed that every being had a soul. The mountains, rivers, winds, and skies all had their own spirits. They were alive, feeling, and guiding. I would say that shamanism was the first spirit of Chinese mythology. People felt nature's breath in every movement they made. Sometimes when thunder roared and other times when storms rose, they lived knowing that a god or spirit was watching over them. Back then, the sky and earth were still one. Everything existed together in a chaotic blend. And it was necessary to untangle that chaos and bring order to it. That's where a massive being named Pangu came into the picture. Let me tell you slowly, because this giant story is incredibly important. Pangu slept within that chaos, in a huge egg, for a full 18,000 years. Just think about that. 18,000 years. A colossal power waiting in silence and darkness behind an eggshell. One day, Pangu awakens. Feeling cramped and confined within the egg, he decides to break free. As soon as he cracks the egg, everything around him changes. The light things rise up to the sky, while the heavy ones sink down to the earth. In doing so, Pangu separates the sky from the earth. With his giant axe, he begins to shape the world: mountains, rivers, seas. Everything takes form by his hands. However, Pangu's mission wasn't limited to just the world. He also had to create the forces that would protect it. This is why the first gods, guardians of the sky and the earth, emerged during this process. Pangu, who bore the sky on his shoulders, ultimately sacrificed his life for this purpose. His breath became the wind, his voice turned into thunder. His eyes became the sun and moon, while his body transformed into mountains, his blood into rivers, and his bones into stones. Pangu's sacrifice animated nature. Now everything had a meaning. Mountains were no longer just piles of rocks, and the water flowing into rivers wasn't just an ordinary stream. They all carried life and spirit. These first gods and the nature-based belief system permeated the lives of the people. At the peaks of every mountain, along the banks of every river, and in every valley where the wind blew, the presence of a god was felt. The people of China lived each day with these gods, believing in their power and making offerings. And that's how Chinese mythology begins. The separation of the sky and earth, meeting these gods under the guidance of shamans, became an inseparable part of human life. And over time, these legends grew even larger. Dragons, gods, and emperors found their place in this world. But this is just the beginning. There are many more stories to tell. The story of Pangu is one of the oldest and most important legends in Chinese mythology. When you hear his name, it brings to mind not just a giant being, but also the birth of the world itself. Among the legends, Pangu's creative power and how it shaped nature are told like a fascinating epic. But this isn't just an ordinary creation story. Pangu is the force that breathed life into the world out of chaos. Once upon a time, at the beginning of the universe, there was a chaotic void where everything was intertwined. In this emptiness, nothing was clear. The sky and the earth existed together, all mixed up. And it was at this moment that Pangu was born. He grew strong in the midst of this chaos, inside a massive egg, sleeping for 18,000 years until one day he finally woke up. When that day came, Pangu's sleep came to an end. Feeling cramped inside the egg, he decided to break free. His breaking of the egg was like a revolution. As the shell cracked, chaos slowly began to take shape. Everything light floated up toward the sky. The sky rose so high that Pangu could never bring it back down. But everything heavy sank down to form the earth, creating the land and seas. However, this newly born world still needed order. The sky, mountains, and rivers had only taken shape but still required a protector, a guide. Pangu played this crucial role, not only shaping the new world but also safeguarding it. After separating the sky from the earth, he did everything he could to keep these two great forces from mixing again. He held up the sky on his shoulders until the world was completely balanced. Each day, Pangu grew a little more. A bit more distance formed between the sky and the earth every day. As he grew, the world expanded too. Ultimately, when Pangu completed his task, he was worn out and exhausted. But he didn't just shape the world, he breathed life into it with his own body. Pangu's massive form echoed throughout nature. His breath turned into the wind, his voice became thunder. His eyes became the sun and the moon in the sky. His skin turned to soil, his blood flowed through the rivers. Pangu's body created mountains, and his veins became the great rivers found around the world. Thanks to Pangu's body, people understood the origins of nature. Every mountain symbolized Pangu's might. Every stream carried his life-giving power. At the core of Chinese mythology, this connection between nature and humanity rests on Pangu's sacrifice. This giant was not only seen as a creator, but also as a spirit living in every part of the world. In this legend, Pangu's creation of the world from chaos signifies more than just giving it a physical shape. It also tells of the deep connections between all elements of nature. The height of mountains, the flow of rivers, the breeze of the wind all reflect the process through which Pangu created the world. And everywhere people walked, they felt his presence. When they climbed mountains, they encountered Pangu's strength. When they walked along riverbanks, they witnessed the flow of his life-giving blood. The world he created provided a place for people to shelter, while instilling a deep respect for nature, adding meaning to their lives. The depth of this myth integrates respect, harmony with nature, and the belief that everything has a purpose for being created, forming the foundations of Chinese mythology. And so, Pangu's sacrifice creates a paradise out of chaos, reminding us that we are all a part of nature. Dragons. In Chinese mythology, dragons hold such a significant place that it's almost impossible to truly grasp the thoughts, beliefs, and culture of this ancient people without understanding them. Dragons aren't just fantastical creatures in Chinese mythology, they are considered sacred beings that maintain the balance of nature and control its forces. Let's take a closer look at the stories of these magical beings. In ancient China, people viewed the dragon as one of the most powerful and supreme creatures on earth. However, unlike the terrifying and destructive dragons found in Western mythology, Chinese dragons were wise, protective, and symbols of balance in all elements of nature. They would summon the winds, bring the rain, and regulate the seasons. Nature spoke through them, and they guided nature. That's why dragons weren't just powerful beings, they were also providers of order and protection. The reason dragons were regarded as so powerful stems from the deep respect the Chinese people had for nature. Nature was the center of their lives. The flow of rivers, the heights of mountains, the clouds in the sky. Everything was a part of nature, and all these elements were under the control of dragons. Without dragons, nature would lose its balance. Even droughts and disasters could sometimes be attributed to the wrath of dragons. Chinese farmers would hold ceremonies to seek the favor of dragons when the rain was delayed. They were the spirits of nature, the gods of rain and abundance. For this reason, the Chinese dragon was also a symbol of prosperity, bounty, and wealth. But the power of these dragons wasn't limited to nature. Chinese emperors identified themselves with dragons. Dragons were the sacred beings of kings and emperors. In fact, Chinese emperors were referred to as the sons of the dragon. Even the emperor's throne was adorned with dragon patterns. The sacredness of dragons added to the emperor's authority, because dragons not only controlled the forces of nature, but also symbolized the divine authority of the ruler. The dragon was the emperor of the heavens and the protector of the earth. The immense power of the Chinese dragon inspired respect and admiration among the people. It wasn't just a mythological creature, it had become a sacred symbol. Even the appearance of dragons was a metaphor. Chinese dragons possessed a long, serpent-like body, horns, beards, and claws, showcasing features from various animals. This mix indicated that dragons were powerful in every aspect. Their bodies seemed to be a fusion of air, water, earth, and fire. Dragons would soar through the skies, dragging clouds along, and swim through the seas, stirring up storms. Their power was everywhere on land, in the sea, in the air, and even among humans. There's a story when the sky god couldn't send enough rain to the people. The Chinese dragon would step in and fill the sky with its breath. Rain clouds formed from the dragon's breath, and winds began to blow from the flapping of its wings. This tale illustrates how the dragon directed all the forces of nature. Its presence helped bring rain, grow crops, and sustain life. Dragons were also associated with wisdom and longevity. A dragon represented not just physical strength but also vast knowledge and eternal life. In Chinese mythology, it was believed that dragons existed outside of time, living infinitely. That's why worshipping dragons among the people also meant wishing for a long and healthy life. Festivals were held in honor of dragons and temples were built for them. People hoped to benefit from the power and wisdom of these beings. That's why the Chinese dragon occupies a central place in mythology. It's not just a creature but a sacred power that encompasses every aspect of nature, elevates emperors, and brings abundance to people. The story of the dragon reflects the deep respect the Chinese people have for nature and its cycles. The dragon in Chinese mythology resonates in every storm, every rain, and every breeze, and this ancient myth continues to live on in the minds and hearts of people today. Dragons are the soul of China, they are the symbols of nature. And every time we hear their story, we take one step closer to their ancient wisdom. The birth of humanity. This story, told through the eyes of a wise figure, is a magical narrative that rises from the mists of ancient times and reaches us today. In Chinese mythology, the creation of humans and the origins of the first civilizations are shaped by emperors and divine beings. However, there's one story that recounts the moment humanity took its first breath, the tale of Nuwa, the mother of all humanity, the creator goddess. Nuwa's story is an epic about the order that follows chaos and the rebuilding of the world from fragments. She is a being who maintains balance on Earth, a creator and protector. But everything starts with a catastrophe. The sky had torn away from the Earth, creating a massive void that hung above the world. Stars were drifting, the sun and moon couldn't find their place, and the world was turned upside down. Even the gods couldn't escape this chaos. It was at this point that Nuwa took action to restore nature's balance and save humanity. Nuwa's greatest achievement was the creation of humans. Legend has it that, at that time, there were no people on Earth. There were no sounds of joy or mournful cries. Everything was silent, but Nuwa felt the loneliness of the Earth. It needed to be filled with human voices, and life should flow like rivers. With this thought, Nuwa sat by a stream and began to mold the first humans from clay with her hands. Each human form came to life in the goddess's hands. Some were shorter, some taller, some slender, others strong. Nuwa created each person individually from the clay and breathed life into them. However, it wasn't possible for Nuwa to create all humans from just one lump of clay. Time was passing, and the creation process was slow. So, Nuwa found a solution. She took a string, dipped it in the clay, and flung it into the sky. Each droplet of clay that fell to the ground would become a person. Some people were delicately shaped by the goddess's hands, while others were merely drops of clay that fell from the string. This is a mythological explanation for the differences among humanity. Everyone is different, but each one is a creation that came from Nuwa. Once humans were created, Nuwa's duties were not over. There was still a great tear in the sky. This tear brought chaos to the world, disrupting the natural order. Stars were displaced, and the heavens trembled. The goddess devised a plan to stop this disaster. She set out, harnessing the power of dragons, great beasts, and other mythological creatures. Collecting 5 gigantic stones of different colors, she set about repairing the tear in the sky. These stones symbolize the balance of the universe: red, black, white, yellow, and blue. Each represented an element, a power. Nuwa melted these stones and placed them in the sky. The heavens returned to their former state, and the earth found peace. Stars were in their rightful places, and the sun and moon resumed their movements. Now there was order in the world. Humans had been created, and life had begun anew. But during this process, Nuwa's sacrifice was immense. She dedicated all her strength to this task and saved the world from chaos. That's why in Chinese mythology, Nuwa is regarded as a sacred figure who created humanity and repaired the world. She is not just a goddess, but also a savior. So what did the humans created by Nuwa do? They began to establish civilizations under the leadership of emperors. The first emperors were beings inspired by celestial powers. It was their duty to create order on earth and guide the people. These emperors, associated with dragons, represented both heaven and earth. Under their leadership, people learned to farm, manage rivers, and build cities. The emperors guided the humans created by Nuwa towards civilization. One of these emperors, Qin Shi, is the figure who brought the first knowledge to the people, leading humanity towards civilization. According to mythology, humans initially lived chaotic lives. They survived like animals. Qin Shi taught them how to fish, hunt, and set traps. He guided them on how to feed themselves and live in an organized way. He also represented the balance of yin and yang, teaching people how all opposites in nature could exist in harmony. His legend is about the emperors who took the first steps in human history. The saga that begins with Nuwa creating humans from clay transforms into a tale of sowing the first seeds of civilization alongside Qin Shi and other emperors. Each step is a journey of humanity learning from nature, drawing inspiration from the gods, and progressing under the guidance of emperors. This story, at the heart of Chinese mythology, reminds us of how closely intertwined nature and humanity are. And the place where it all began is those first humans shaped by Nuwa's hands. Huang Di, the Dragon Emperor, a legendary leader descended from the gods, who brought wisdom and technology to humanity. His story is an epic shaped by the power of dragons, emerging from the depths of mythology. Even Huang Di's birth was no ordinary event. He is known as an emperor who embodied the dragons and descended to earth with their strength. It's believed that his lineage is connected to powerful and wise dragon creatures in the heavens. This lineage is what sets him apart from other humans, making him a god king. Once there were dragons that maintained the balance between the heavens and the earth. These dragons were not just powerful, they were also wise beings. Their traces could be found in every river, mountain, and sky on earth. Huang Di not only came from this dragon lineage, but also inherited their wisdom and powers. According to legends, Huang Di's mother saw a bright star in the sky, and that night, the dragons gave her a dream. It was after this dream that Huang Di miraculously came into the world. With his birth, people knew that a leader from the dragon lineage would guide them forward. Huang Di embodied the dragon's ability to control natural forces. He was not just an emperor but a leader who could speak to the spirits of nature and harness their energies for the benefit of humanity. Thanks to the deep connection he had with the dragons, he introduced agriculture, medicine, writing, and many other technologies to the people. But he didn't do this with power alone, he did it with wisdom and a deep understanding. His reign marked an age of enlightenment for humanity. The belief in Huang Di's dragon lineage symbolized the strong ties he had with nature. He was an emperor who shaped mountains and directed rivers. Especially the Yellow River symbolized his connection to this lineage. The Dragon Emperor had harnessed this great river, directing its waters to fertile agricultural lands. As a result, people enjoyed bountiful harvests and became prosperous in their lands. For a leader from the dragon lineage, to control the untamable forces of nature was only possible because of his mythological heritage. But Huang Di was not just a leader or a wise man who communicated with nature. One of his greatest legacies was bringing technology to humanity. It is believed that under Huang Di's rule, people learned to write. Writing was introduced as a way to store and share knowledge. He also created the calendar for the first time, helping people align their activities with the seasons. This meant a huge revolution in agriculture. People could now accurately know when to plant and harvest, allowing them to obtain more efficient crops. The calendar was the work of a leader who understood the cyclical nature of the world, and this knowledge changed the lives of all his people.
Another great achievement of Huang Di was laying the foundations of medicine. Recognized as the father of medicine, Huang Di taught how to use healing herbs, plants, and minerals. People could now fight diseases and heal their wounds. Under his leadership, public health improved and life expectancy increased. Legend has it that Huang Di discovered which herbs could cure which diseases by drawing inspiration directly from the dragons. The wisdom imparted to him by his dragon lineage influenced not only battles but also the health of his people. Of course, one of the greatest revolutions Huang Di brought to humanity as a symbol of his dragon lineage was technological inventions. According to legends, the first carts were invented during Huang Di's time. He was the one who taught people how to use wheels and construct carts. This was an invention that transformed not only daily life, but also warfare strategies. People could now reach far distances more quickly and expand trade routes. Thanks to these inventions, Huang Di was known as a master of both nature and technology. Naturally, it was expected that an emperor from a dragon lineage would also excel in martial arts. Huang Di did not disappoint in this regard. As a leader infused with the power of dragons, he achieved victories over his enemies. His military strategies were born from a wisdom that was in harmony with the rhythm of nature. He would direct the winds with the power of dragons, turning battlefields to his advantage. During his reign, China's borders expanded and Huangdi's people lived in prosperity. All these stories tell us this Huangdi was not just an emperor but a wise figure who had unlocked the secrets of nature and science. The belief that he came from a dragon lineage encompassed not only physical strength but also wisdom and leadership abilities. As one of the greatest mythological emperors of China, Huangdi guided humanity and led them to the gates of civilization, bringing the wisdom of dragons to the earth. Under his leadership, people learned to live in harmony with nature and advanced by utilizing technology. Huangdi's legacy has left deep marks not just in Chinese mythology, but also in Chinese culture. This great emperor from a dragon lineage ruled his people with wisdom, not just power, leaving them with an unforgettable legacy for all time. That ancient connection between the heavens and the earth. In Chinese mythology, the emperor's right to rule came directly from the sky, meaning from the gods. An emperor wasn't just a ruler, he also wielded absolute power over his people under the protection of the gods. But this power wasn't eternal. Just as the sky could generously bestow authority upon an emperor, it could just as mercilessly take it back. Yes, the gods were the source of power, but their wrath could be so great that it could bring entire kingdoms to ruin. This is why Chinese emperors were responsible not only for governing their people but also for being in harmony with the forces of nature and the will of the gods. If an emperor lost the support of the gods, the signs of that loss would become evident right away. Wars would break out, droughts would begin, and the land would cease to be fruitful. The most severe warning would be the rebellion of nature's forces. Rivers would overflow, mountains would shake, and thunder and storms would rage across the sky. This was a clear sign of the gods' anger toward the emperor. The authority the sky had granted him was being taken back, because an emperor had to maintain his people's welfare and the balance of nature. Otherwise, the sky would turn its back on him. Once, there was a great emperor in China. His reign started off magnificent. His people lived in abundance, and the land was overflowing with fertility. The emperor had the support of the gods, and with that power, he expanded his kingdom and secured its borders. However, over time, ambition and greed took over the emperor. He began to use the sacred authority granted to him by the gods solely for his own interests. He neglected his people and acted irresponsibly toward nature. He built dams that dried up rivers, cut down sacred forests, and plundered the land. That was when the sky turned its back on him. Everything started with a small sign. Thunder roared relentlessly above the imperial palace. The people were terrified, for this sound was a sign of the sky's discontent. Then came a great drought. The fields were scorched, and the rivers had nearly run dry. The people were struggling with hunger. The emperor ignored the gods' warnings. After all, he was at the height of his power. What did his people matter? But the gods' anger was growing. Shortly after, wars broke out. The emperor's authority had weakened, and his enemies noticed it and began to attack. Uprisings were erupting all around the kingdom. Each uprising was the fate of an emperor who had lost the gods' support. Nature and humanity united against a ruler who defied the will of the heavens. The wars seemed endless. The sky's wrath toward the emperor dealt the final blow as the rivers overflowed. That once powerful, majestic kingdom was lost beneath the waters. The sky had completely taken back the authority it had given him. These myths served as warnings to the emperors. The authority granted by the gods depended on the welfare of the people and the balance of nature. If an emperor disturbed this balance, the gods' anger was inevitable. Natural disasters were the way the sky delivered its messages to humanity. An earthquake or a flood was not just a natural event, these were divine messages showing the gods' displeasure with humans. If an emperor couldn't understand these messages and failed to take the necessary actions, the outcome would be catastrophic. Another significant event where the sky withdrew its support from an emperor can be seen in the fall of the Shang dynasty. Over time, the Shang dynasty neglected its people, succumbing to wealth and extravagance. While the people were left in hunger and misery, the emperors lived in luxury in their palaces. It was then that the gods turned their backs on this dynasty. The sky had made its decision. Nature began to take action to prepare for the end of the Shang dynasty. Earthquakes occurred throughout the kingdom, and the land ceased to bear fruit. The people revolted, and uprisings broke out. This was the will of the gods. The time had come for a new dynasty. The fall of the Shang dynasty was one of the clearest examples of how the authority granted by the heavens could be taken back. Chinese mythology tells us through these stories how nature, the sky, and the gods intervene in human life. Emperors were not just political leaders, they were also representatives of nature and the gods. Their authority to rule was a blessing from the heavens. But that blessing was a fragile gift that could be taken back at any moment. Emperors had to constantly fulfill their responsibilities to their people and nature to avoid losing this authority given to them by the heavens. The sky demanded balance. If this balance was disrupted, the gods' anger would be just as great. This is why every emperor was taught from childhood, the sky has given you authority, but you can lose it. Emperors were responsible for governing not only their people but also nature. If natural disasters arose, they had to immediately recognize these as warnings from the gods. If an emperor ignored these warnings from the heavens, his kingdom would fall, and his people would perish. Because if the sky had granted authority to the emperors, it was entirely within its rights to take it back. And remember, dear listeners, these myths are not just old stories from the past. They are among the oldest lessons about how nature and humanity are interconnected. The power granted by the sky relies on the welfare of the people and the balance of nature. When that balance is disrupted, it reminds us that disasters are inevitable, because nature draws its power from the gods, and the gods' anger determines humanity's fate. The heavens may grant emperors the right to rule, but the greatest power lies in nature and the gods to take that authority back. Dragons. They're not just a cornerstone of Chinese mythology, but also a fundamental part of ancient Chinese culture. However, these dragons were no ordinary beings. They were sacred creatures that controlled water and air, determined the fate of agriculture, and governed the hopes and fears of the people. In Chinese mythology, dragons were more than just fantastical creatures found in stories. They served as a bridge between gods and humans, wielded the power of nature, and played a vital role in the livelihood of the people. Especially the water dragons were an indispensable part of Chinese agriculture. Just think about it, a world without water. Crops thirsty, soil dry, rivers all dried up. Back then, people relied entirely on rain for the fertility of the land, and rain was believed to be a blessing controlled by the dragons. Because of this, the respect and worship for water dragons became one of the most important rituals in society. The people would pray to the dragons for rain. During times of drought, they would cry out to the water dragons, waiting for the rain to come. Because rain meant life. Without rain, crops wouldn't grow. Without crops, hunger and death were inevitable. Can you imagine a water dragon gathering clouds while soaring through the sky? With its massive wings, it would stir the winds, bringing the clouds together. Then, it would open its huge mouth and bring the rain down from the heavens. That was the power of these dragons. They could control nature and determine the fate of agriculture. So after every rain, the people would express their gratitude to the water dragons, honoring them. Controlling the weather was another important responsibility. Not just rain, but winds and storms were in the hands of the dragons. Weather conditions could make or break a harvest. If the winds blew too harshly, the crops could be swept away. Storms could wipe out fields and villages. That's why dragons were also seen as masters of winds and storms. A farming community would pray to the dragons before a storm. Their prayers were dedicated to calming the winds and stopping the storms. If a dragon was pleased, the weather would be favorable. Another vital role of water dragons was protecting rivers. One of China's biggest rivers, the Yellow River Huanghe, was seen as the home of these mythological dragons. The dragons controlled the rivers and regulated the flow of water. If a river overflowed, it was seen as a sign of the dragon's anger. So people living in villages along the river would frequently offer sacrifices and tributes to appease the dragons. Flooding or droughts were considered indicators of the dragon's power. Even emperors recognized and respected the power of dragons. In a China dominated by an agriculture-based economy, timely rain and steady river flows were crucial for the empire's prosperity. That's why emperors often participated in rain prayers and offered tributes to the dragons. If it didn't rain, it could impact not just the people's fate, but emperors as well. Drought wasn't just about famine, it was also a sign of the gods and dragons' anger toward the emperor. If an emperor wanted to protect his people and maintain their prosperity, he had to respect the power of the dragons. Once upon a time, there was a long-lasting drought. The rains stopped, rivers dried up, and crops began to wither one by one. The people were desperate, and the emperor had to find a solution for them. His advisors in the palace said the drought was connected to the dragon's anger. The water dragons hadn't received the respect they deserved, so they had cut off the rain. The emperor couldn't ignore this situation. A ceremony was quickly organized. He offered tributes to the water dragons and conducted a great rain prayer. To regain the dragon's favor, the water sources were honored, and the sacred rivers were cleansed.
And then on that day, clouds appeared in the sky. The dragons had listened to the prayers. Clouds, enveloped by their massive wings, opened the gates of heaven. Raindrops fell slowly at first, then picked up speed, soaking the fields. The rivers began to surge again, and the land came back to life. The people welcomed this miraculous event with joy. The emperor had once again received the favor of the dragons. This event showcased the power of the water dragons once more. They were not just masters of water, but of life itself. It's also significant that dragons were seen as mediators to the gods. They didn't just control air and water, they were considered the representatives of the gods on earth. For the people to reach the gods, they had to pray to the dragons, because the dragons were the bridge between gods and humans. Prayers made to the dragons would directly reach the gods, gaining their favor. If a dragon was pleased, the gods would also be pleased. That's why dragons were always held in great respect and honored as sacred beings. In conclusion, dragons in Chinese mythology are not just fantastical creatures, but sacred figures that govern the power of nature. Agriculture, rain, water, rivers. All of these were under the control of the dragons. The welfare of the people depended on their grace. When respected, nature would be generous, and the lands would flourish. But if the dragons were forgotten or disrespected, disasters were inevitable. The sky took shape under the dragon's wings, and the earth came alive with their breath. And these myths have lived on in the hearts and minds of the people for thousands of years, continuing to thrive. All right, gather around the fire, and let me take you back to the ancient times of history, deep within the lands of China. I remember the grand era of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. This young emperor, who spread his power to every corner of his lands and laid the foundations of modern China, had dreams that surpassed those of an ordinary ruler. All he desired was immortality, to sit on his throne for eternity and maintain his power through the ages. Now let's dive into Qin Shi Huang's quest for that deadly elixir, his passion for immortality, and the ancient myths he chased after. Although Qin Shi Huang held all the power, he could never escape the cold shadow of death. From the moment he ascended the throne at a young age, he saw death as a threat and tried every possible way to avoid leaving this world. The legends that echoed in his ears turned him into a nomad in pursuit of immortality. Taoist sages spoke to him of a legendary island called Penglai. It was said to be a paradise of immortality hidden behind the clouds. This mountain was a place unreachable by humans, where only gods and immortals resided. It was as if it had broken free from the bonds of the earth, rising to the sky, and was hidden within those mystical waters. Qin Shi Huang painted a picture of Penglai in his mind, a sacred mountain guarded by winds, lightning, and thunder, where the sacred elixir of immortality was concealed. He surrounded himself with Taoist priests. He learned from each of them the paths to immortality, read ancient texts, and no matter what, he wanted to live. As the priests prepared various elixirs for him, Qin Shi Huang drank a drop from each one. Over time, these elixirs, which became sharper in taste and deeper in effect, brought him not immortality but illness. Yet he did not stop. His eyes were solely fixed on that mountain of immortality. They say the key to the path of immortality lies in living among the immortals on Penglai Mountain, obtaining their knowledge and secrets. Just knowing how far Qin Shi Huang went in this quest for immortality can send chills down your spine. He sent thousands of workers and slaves to the lost seas to find the mystery of Penglai. And as Qin Shi Huang's steps echoed throughout China, he was perhaps chasing not a hope but merely the ambition, as the Taoist said. For a ruler, immortality meant rooting himself in the world, challenging all of time. But in the end, this path dragged him to the other side of the river, just like so many who followed him. Legends say that the mountain of immortality, Penglai, is still hidden behind the clouds, and only those who truly deserve it can reach it, not just anyone who seeks it. That's how it was, my friends. Qin Shi Huang's quest for immortality remains a reflection of both ambition and wisdom, passed down from generation to generation. We're diving deep into the story, my children. There's a realm hidden from the eyes of the living, a place that souls can't avoid embarking on their journey. In ancient Chinese beliefs, death isn't seen as an end but as the beginning of a long journey to the afterlife. On this path, souls are judged in the foggy kingdom of hell, and before reaching the welcoming light of heaven, they must leave behind all traces of their past lives. This realm of the dead, shaped by a blend of Taoist and Buddhist beliefs, is both complex and filled with mysteries. In this land, there's a ruler who greets the souls, a name that echoes throughout the universe, Yan Luo Wang. He is the very judge of the souls in his hands. He holds a book that accounts for every sin committed in the world. No soul can find peace until it stands before Yan Luo Wang, for no living being can escape his judgment. The existence of heaven and hell is the ultimate point of this reckoning. Did a soul do good or evil in its lifetime? All truths cannot escape the sharp gaze of Yan Luo Wang. His all-seeing eyes delve into the past of each soul, weighing every act of kindness and every wrongdoing. For souls entering Yan Luo Wang's kingdom, this journey is almost a process of purification. My child, death doesn't mean everything ends. Here, every sin has a price, and every good deed is rewarded. If a soul has lived a beautiful life on earth, it's sent to the peaceful gardens of heaven. Trees, rivers reaching for the sky, and living in endless peace become its reward. But if things went differently, the soul's path turns much darker. Souls that are questioned in front of Yan Luo Wang and are heavy with sins must suffer under the laws of karma through cycles of rebirth. Yan Luo Wang's scales of justice are balanced, as described by Taoists and Buddhists. Souls that have found the right path ascend to the layered heavens, while those who strayed take a path of purification in the layers of hell for rebirth. The ruthless ruler of the realm of the dead, Yan Luo Wang, stands at the very top of this place where souls are drawn towards eternal peace or the endless cycle of punishment, silently watching with all-seeing eyes. And so the soul's journey in the afterlife begins, perhaps ending in the light of heaven with supreme peace, or continuing in the brutal cycle of rebirths along the path the soul has carved for itself. Everything is hidden in our experiences in this world. How can we escape the justice of Yan Luo Wang, my friends? So shouldn't we think carefully about what kind of place we'll find in the next life? You must have heard of the power of dragons. These ancient beings have left deep marks not just in Chinese mythology but throughout all of China. I'm not talking about ordinary dragons, oh no. We're talking about the dragon kings, the ones who connect heaven and earth, bring storms and herald the rain. These kings have become legendary figures, not only for their strength but also for their wisdom and gifts of immortality, directly interacting with humanity. The wise people of ancient China believed that the dragon kings were supreme spirits residing in the sky. They would hide at the peaks of mountains and beneath the depths of deep lakes and great rivers, like guardians of the passageways connecting this world to others. When these dragons were benevolent, they would share their secrets with people, granting them the power to achieve wisdom and even immortality. But keep in mind, They didn't chase after every soul. The Dragon Kings accepted only those heroes who truly possessed courage and integrity in their hearts, refusing to succumb to their ambitions. Well, receiving such a rare and precious gift wasn't going to be easy, of course. Many stories are told about the heroes who received this gift from the dragons. Ye, for instance, shot down the sun with his arrows and maintained the order created by Nuwa. Heroes who accomplished such great feats caught the attention of the dragons and received their wise advice. Still, the greatest reward bestowed by the dragons was the secret of eternal life. Yes, my children, immortality. The stories of those who had access to the secrets of infinite life, even in this world, would be passed down from generation to generation. But this secret was too delicate to be used cunningly, and it was even dangerous. Those who passed the dragon's trials would be rewarded with immortality, but would also have to confront the darkest corners of their souls. Another lesson that the dragons taught those who sought their wisdom was understanding that life itself is a cycle. True immortality lies not in the body, but in virtuous actions. Heroes would use the wisdom they gained from dragons to face the challenges within each new day. Herein lies the secret of being human and finding wisdom in life. The dragon would choose to impart wisdom not for its own sake, but for its people, its surroundings, and those who would come after. Because in doing so, its name would become immortal. This secret guarded by the Dragon Kings had echoed in the hearts of only a few mortals. With the power granted by the dragons, they transcended their own lives and left an everlasting mark on human history. And we learn from each of these heroes, who carried ancient treasures within themselves, that wisdom itself is a reward of immortality. It's a heartfelt immortality that even the living can reach. Thus, a person who can purify their soul and knows themselves can attain the gift of wisdom from the dragons. Now take a deep breath, because many more mysterious tales and secrets of immortality await us in Chinese mythology. All right, let's dive into this with a wise tone. Imagine a world within the vast depths of Chinese mythology, where even the ordinary lives of emperors and dynasties are shaped in the shadows of the gods. The ancient emperors drew inspiration not just from their thrones, but also from that mysterious realm connecting heaven and earth. The rivers empowered by dragons, the wisdom of ancient turtles, the might of the gods, and the longing for sacred immortality all influenced their governance. Chinese mythology wasn't just limited to stories of gods wandering in the skies, it was embedded deep within everyday life. Mythological motifs brought art, literature, and all aspects of life to life. As poets captured the immortal bond between gods and humans in their verses, painters immortalized those sacred moments where heaven met earth on their canvases. The dragon, the phoenix, and the wise turtle, each of these became integral parts of China's cultural identity, and each of these sacred beings found an immortal place in ordinary life. Here there's a narrative that stretches from the justice of emperors to the everyday lives of the common people. The wisdom that Chinese mythology imparts to the human spirit and the sanctity woven into the depths of life have influenced empires throughout history. Legends served as both a powerful shield and a guiding light. Thus, the traces of ancient Chinese culture extend all the way to the old temples reaching for the sky, right up to contemporary Chinese art. Ah, dear friends, don't think this is where my tales end. Chinese mythology has such deep roots. If we were to grasp one end and start telling, the other would stretch out for thousands of years. We've only taken a stroll through a world filled with countless gods, legendary creatures, brave heroes, and wise kings. I've brought you just a handful of dust from that ancient treasure of wisdom. But you know, each of these legends sparks a light in our hearts, transporting us to entirely different realms. Today we discuss the power of the gods, the wisdom of dragons, and the emperors chasing immortality. Behind each of these figures lies the deep desires, fears, and loves of the human spirit. These legends aren't just stories. They're actually echoes of wisdom whispering from beyond time. So if one day you find yourself looking at the sky under the moonlight and see the deep stars of heaven, or hear the whisper of a dragon's shadow or an ancient god, know that they are here. They still live on, continuing to dwell in the depths of our souls. As this journey comes to an end, I bid you farewell on your own journeys. Perhaps you've taken a piece of that ancient wisdom with you. Who knows? There are many more stories to tell, my friends, but they are saved for other nights. Now go and let those stories live on in your spirit. Farewell, and may you find peace in the light of ancient knowledge.